Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're taking a look at the rise of generative AI software coding tools. We'll talk about the potential risks of these tools for enterprise companies and look at how to address these risks. To discuss that, I'm joined by a very special guest. With me is Subha Tatavarti, Chief Technology Officer at Wipro. Subha, very good to have you with us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, generative AI, I'm sure you've noticed there's an enormous amount of interest in Gen AI in the enterprise. Curious to get your sense, as close to the market as you are, as you see the rapid rise of generative AI coding tools, what key trends are driving the market? I mean, I'd like to get to risks in a moment. Let's just talk about what's happening out there in the market.
First of all, this is probably one of the most disruptive technologies we've seen in more than 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like in the 90s, what happened with the internet, and then what happened with the apps on mobile, and then now today generative AI. There's different kinds of interesting insights that we are getting. One, there's excitement from business leaders because everyone recognizes that this could definitely drive efficiencies and productivity gains across the board, across the stack, across every vertical, across every business process. Second, there is a lot of confusion.
Mm-hmm. I've
How do
noticed.
exactly, how do I use this? Where do I use it? What are my implications? What are my, to your point, some of those risks that you just talked about? There's a lot of confusion. And third, a lot of experimentation across the board. Every hyperscaler is coming out with their own models, and then there is open source models that are also flooding the markets. So there is a lot of confusion of how do I use it? Where do I use it? How do I derive the best value for my business? And how does this now translate into how my business might evolve in the next 3 to 5 years? So I think overall, very disruptive, but as a technology, is very exciting for us. And we'll see in the next 2 to 3 years how all of this unfolds.
Yeah, I certainly I do sense that confusion you're talking about and the excitement and the potential. On the confusion front, a thing that strikes me is that there's a certain unpredictability about generative AI and artificial intelligence in general, in that it's a technology that can learn by itself. Once we set up the system, it can iterate and get better and more knowledgeable and more insightful over time. So
Yep.
it seems like that generative AI, unlike earlier technologies, has an element of unpredictability about it. I mean, the cloud, I think about the early days of cloud, we kind of knew where it was going. It was new technology, but oh, remote computing, we get it. It's not that complicated. This one seems far more complicated to me than earlier technologies.
It is, I wouldn't call it complicated as much as unknown,
Okay.
right? So for instance, you talked about cloud. Yes, you're absolutely right. It was yet another defining moment because everyone, owned their entire stacks, data centers, and suddenly now you're saying, no, I don't need to own it. Somebody else will own it and operate it for me, but all I have to drive is business. Um, there is some amount of predictability there. But here, I think what is surprising, even to when I talk to academia, what is surprising is what's coming out and how fast the models are able to learn and generate a very human like comprehension. Although we all know at the basis of all of this is statistical analysis of large amounts of data, which is then generalized to be able to predict accurately what is the next word, letter, sentence, code, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like very intelligent. And what is surprising is how well these models are able to predict with contextualized prediction large amounts of data and outputs. And that unpredictability is what is more, I would say concerning, but surprising, concerning, and all the things, that emotions that we just talked about from amongst business leaders,
Mm-hmm.
more than, anything else that we've seen in the last set of technology evolution. And that's probably what is going to be interesting for us.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you speak, it's sort of like we have created this technology really in the mirror image of ourselves, and it's like we thought, wait, what have we created? Everything else has been, the wheel, the fire, whatever. It's not exactly us, but now this thing we've created, it's surprisingly similar to our own brain. If we bring up the risks, then, if I know that some of the companies are concerned, what do you see as some of the risks out there?
Yeah, I mean, just want to touch upon our own brain. Our human brain is far
Please.
more sophisticated than this is at the core of this. It's still statistical analysis of large volumes of data. Besides, basically, ChatGPT 5 is coming out. It like claims to be hundreds of billions of parameters trained on all data available to humans.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of data training gives you more accuracy. Human brain is although it's similar, we also learn from patterns, we also learn from data, we also learn from what has occurred and presented in terms of information to us, but ours is able to do a lot more deduction, be able to take a pattern and apply to a different set of patterns. It doesn't have to be similar patterns, so there's slight difference there. Having said that, the risks, right? Obviously, we all talked about hallucinations. I mean, I'm not going to go through all the stuff that's already there on the internet.
Right.
The biggest challenge I feel is going to be around data and privacy. As an example, we don't know yet. Regulations have not come out yet, but we don't know if a model has been, hypothetically speaking, trained on code or data that has come from an IP that somebody else owns. What does that imply? What's the implication when code is generated by that model and is used for my product development, which then is being commercialized and I'm making money off of it? So how does that really work? We don't know that yet. Mm-hmm. Or as an example, I might not want my data that is present outside in public, which I'm not aware of, to be used for training. Then there is this whole implications on the health side, right? Health and privacy. We don't know what those implications are. The idea that precision medicine is going to accelerate further because of LLMs and generative AI is exciting on one hand, but on the other, the whole patient privacy, we don't know what those implications are yet. So I think, again, the reason generative AI, if you really break it down to the basics, the reason it's so exciting is because the availability of data, the availability of compute that allows you to be able to train on large volumes of data, and a fundamental shift in the architecture of the transformer models, which actually gives you not a linear training, but actually you can have parallelized training, is what is creating this amazing technology. And the foundational part of it is still data. So we still don't know what those implications are yet. And I think we have seen this, and we've seen this with cloud, we've seen this with internet, we've seen this with everything else. Legislation is not sometimes, always lagging, and we don't know what those implications are yet. And I think that's the area to be observed and to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm. The piece you talked about where code has been created and it's based on a model, and someone else wrote another piece of code originally, and so this model is taking its inspiration, at least from the earlier model. Seems like there's going to be a number of lawsuits going on with that kind of thing, and we don't know. I mean, you talk about legislation lagging. Of course, the courts also lag, and the outcome of some of those court cases may also influence all this at the same time.
Potentially, explainability is becoming fairly important in this space, as an example, right? So explainability is the idea that you're able to track from the data set that you have your model trained to the output and to the usage, the end-to-end, the idea that you are able to see the end-to-end lineage. So explainability is a fairly interesting area of research that is also mushrooming as Gen AI adoption is becoming more and more prevalent. So I don't know about the lawsuits part, but I do know, for instance, that explainability as an offset to offset some of this is going to be paramount. And most models, most companies that are coming out with LLMs, because this is a very expensive proposition, even with the advancement in GPUs, even with the availability of massive amounts of free data, text data, it's still an expensive proposition to train LLMs with billions of parameters. So explainability is, most of these companies that are coming out, large organizations, will probably also invest heavily in that area. Or if not, companies like us and others will continue to invest, because one of the things that Wipro does, and Wipro does very well, is anchoring on our values. And I don't know if you know this, 66% of our profits go into a foundation that runs massive programs across the world. So it's kind of anchored in that. So we are actually investing some of our own research areas or in the whole explainability side of things. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this whole equation evolves in the next couple of years.
Well, I think the question that's on a lot of minds, a lot of executives across many companies is, okay, we know there's risks out there. You've talked a little bit about how to protect yourself from the risks. It's the issue of explainability is one of it. Is there something else that executives can keep in mind if they're worried about some of the risks of deploying generative AI? How can they guard themselves and their company?
I think the very first thing has to be, obviously, you will have to follow the basic principles of using any third-party technology. Even if you're using cloud, you don't use, most companies who are that are fairly regulatory restrictions, and even non-regulatory, you don't use native APIs. You always make sure that you have a lightweight PaaS layer, that essentially platform as a service layer, which essentially ensures that you have the right kinds of bells and whistles built in architecturally to protect your workloads. I'm talking about a cloud example, and similar principles will apply, for instance, on the security side, metering side. Some of the consumption models right now available are very, very expensive on LLMs. So how do you make sure you have showback and chargeback models in place in the organization? How do you make sure that you have the right kind of data obfuscation where necessary? For instance, you've seen many instances in the first 6 months of GPT release where employees posted sensitive data directly on ChatGPT, and that caused a massive breach. So how do you protect yourself? So you need to have some sort of an orchestration layer, some sort of a lightweight PaaS layer to protect your organization's basically assets from being exposed. And I think that's definitely the first part, I would say. The second is they are not, right now, they're not the cheapest ways of, they're not cheap, as I said earlier. What kind of use cases will give you the most bang for your buck? If you really pare it down, the biggest asset that LLMs provide for any enterprise is productivity gains. We at Wipro have been running pilots across multiple service lines. And in some service lines, we've seen 30 to 40% productivity gains. So that 30 to 40% productivity gains will convert into bottom line for us. These are all experiments, but then again, these are expensive. So you'll have to figure out what is the right use case for your business where you can create that massive productivity gains that everybody's promising. However, still making sure that you're taking care of those risks that come with it. And the last thing would be education, education across your employees. We at Wipro, we have 250,000 employees, and we have committed to at least provide basic level 1 and level 2 awareness and education on generative AI to all our 250,000 employees, because we believe that this is game-changing for us. We believe that this is not only game-changing, but also potentially risky if you're not aware of what kind of implications it may have on you for your business. So that's another third part, which is, have your employees be aware of what this technology means for you, and ensure that you're able to protect for your business, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm sure that third part is a really big part of it. The idea of educating the employees and the staffers, and they may or may not understand the technology, and they might use it in some instances irresponsibly. And maybe the line gets a little blurred between what's personal and what's professional. And obviously, that is going to be an area in the years ahead that does need attention. You've talked about Wipro. I want to make sure I give you a chance to sort of drill down into the Wipro offering. I mean, how is Wipro addressing the generative AI needs of its clients? What's the Wipro advantage in this sense?
I think we're very, very well positioned. I mean, we announced in July $1 billion investment internally to do a couple of things. One is we believe that we can optimize our business across the board, whether it is our core operations, or whether it is our service lines, and whether it is our platforms. Including training all our employees, as I said, on generative AI, right? So that's the very first thing we said we will do. Second is we want to be able to learn from our experiences very quickly and transfer and to our customers, to our clients. Some of the pilots we're running internally is giving us amazing insights for us to be able to then take it to our customers and say, okay, this is what we did and this is what we did not do, and this is why you shouldn't be doing this versus why you should be doing this, as an example.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are those use cases, or what exactly are those?
Oh, across the board, from marketing to HR to business operations to hiring to background checks to code to L1 operations, to L2 operations, across the board. I think we are one of the first movers to actually adopt the technology first within the organization. We are the customer zero, right? We're the ground zero, we're customer zero. We want to first see how this impacts us, and then be able to then very quickly take that to our customers. See, right now, as I said in the beginning of the podcast, that there's a lot of confusion amongst executives, whether it's going to work, whether it's not going to work, what is going to work for us. So with this amount of data that is now coming in, and we are able to see this on the ground within our organizations, we're able to guide our customers to kind of make the right decisions when it comes to adopting generative AI. And thirdly, we are also building offerings that can help very quickly adopt this technology with all the bells and whistles I just talked about, to make sure that we are protecting our enterprise customers from directly using native APIs, but orchestration layer, building an orchestration layer that can be abstracted out for various verticals. So there is multiple areas that we are working through generative AI as it applies to our core business. And then we do believe strongly that what we will bring to our customers will actually change the perception of how this technology can potentially benefit them. The confusion and all of that is actually also coming from our own studies and our own interactions with our 1,400 plus customer base. So there's multiple fronts. We also believe in working with our startup ecosystem. So we launched several programs where we can bring in the right kind of startups that we can partner and scale with, to kind of bust the myth for enterprise customers. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, I think the biggest question of all that executives are thinking about is what is the future of generative AI in the enterprise? And it seems like a couple things are clear. One is that there probably will be digital assistants that will be in essence, digital employees that may augment, or in some cases, replace human employees. We're still working on that one. The other, of course, is that unpredictability piece you talked about. It's hard to know, but what do you see when you look ahead, 2025, 2026 for generative AI in the enterprise? What do you think we'd be talking about then?
I think we'll be definitely talking about new job families. This is
job positions, all job titles.
Job titles, job families, yes. The idea that we remember technology replaced many manual human-led processes in the last several decades. Internet replaced many forms of communication and how we exchange information. Similarly, this technology, I think, will replace a few jobs, as you said, but also create new ones. And I think that is going to be very interesting. And enterprises will have the ones that are able to see and predict what that looks like for their business verticals are the ones that most likely will, be the next leaders, the next leaders in the next 5 years. So that's one. The second is, I think that I used to always say this, that earlier most companies were domain companies, like vertical companies. They were like retail companies, and they adopted technology to better their processes. Then we looked at every company as a technology company that specialized in a specific domain. And I think in the future, every company will be an AI company that then specializes in a specific domain. So I think these are the two big things that I see. It'll be exciting. I think all of us, at least the ones that are that live in technology, we are very excited for what the future has to offer, and I'm hopeful that all of us will have the similar discussion in the next 2 to 3 years, and it would be on a absolutely different job family topic or enterprise vertical.
Interesting about that every company is a tech company, and then that evolves to every company is an AI company, but their specialty might be retail. It sort of suggests that they would need to create a lot of in-house expertise with AI as opposed to outsourcing. It seems like executives are thinking now, like, well, we can't hire this, we can't do this in-house, it's just too expensive, we're confused, so we're going to outsource it. But you're saying that they might actually, every company is going to really have to have in-house resources about artificial intelligence.
I think it's going to be both. I don't think our business, like for instance, we are an outsourced company, we are a services consulting firm. I think we have a tremendous opportunity ahead of us. If obviously you have to play it right, or most businesses have to play it right, because the in-house expertise is part of it, but most importantly, it's going to be a combination of external expertise and in-house expertise. In the past, it used to be that I'm going to outsource this because of the cost, it's because I don't have the right technology or what have you, and I want to focus on business and not necessarily tech. There's multiple reasons for it. In the future, that is not going to go away. That shift of the focus on businesses to grow on their specific business is not going to go away. What will emerge is that how do we create in-house expertise but complement it with the best and the brightest from outside? The same reasons why you want to use cloud. Why do you want to use cloud? Time to market. If you want to buy the next best GPUs to optimize your models, the lead time is anywhere from 6 to 12 months and even more, because you have to get the right GPUs. It has to be in your data center. You need to be configured. I mean, it's just a huge process. It's an 18 months process. But when you go to cloud, immediately you get the best and the latest GPU version, the best and the latest, framework version, library version, all of that. So it's time to market for businesses. Similar paradigm will emerge for generative AI as well. And that's what I believe, because if businesses are looking for time to market, they will rely on companies like Wipro. And we think that we are very, very well positioned for generative AI and AI because we've been doing it for 10 years and we have a hyper focus on this now. And companies, hyperscalers like, the hyperscalers that we all talk about, and they will want to rely, because for them it still becomes time to market is still very critical for them. There's two reasons why businesses want to work with us, right? Top line growth and bottom line growth, and both still remain a problem in the next 3 to 5 years. So I think our business is very well positioned for the emerging paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm. Subha, I think you said it. It's fascinating. I learned a lot. Thanks for sharing your expertise today, and I hope you come back and talk with us again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, James, for having me. It was a pleasure.